Okay, why don't we get going here? Morning, everybody. Greetings from Chicago. It's a really cold day here today. I hope you're having some warmer weather out by you. Just a couple of things. We've got 35 people so far on this webinar, so thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. So we're going to be talking about the basics of bar designs, and what I'm going to do, if we could just set up a couple of housekeeping things. If you're not already muted, please go ahead and mute yourself. So I don't hear like your dog barking or your kid yelling at you or something. And if you've got any questions as we're going along, feel free to add those to the chat. And then Amy Houston is actually monitoring the chat room. And then if she sees enough questions there, she's going to go ahead and interrupt me and ask those questions. And then at the end, I've left plenty of time for you to just unmute yourself and then ask questions in your own voice as well. So, in addition, one other thing, I do have quite a few things that I'm going to send you as follow-up. So be sure either I or Raul Cervantes or Amy Houston gets your email address so we can send you that information. I am also recording this, so I can make that available to you and your colleagues later if you wanted to watch it again. Okay, well, that being said, let's get going. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video so I'm not so distracting, and we will get going. Okay. So I love starting off with this slide. This is a picture of a really wonderful bartender that I met earlier this year. Her name is Caledonia Wright, and how could I forget a beautiful name like that? And she is a bartender at a really great place in Vancouver. And she's sitting there proudly in front of her Tobin Ellis cocktail station there. And she and I had a really spirited, fun discussion about a book that is called Cheaper by the Dozen. I don't know if you guys remember that. There were 2 films made based on the book that were not at all based on the book. So don't bother looking at the movies to get any idea of what it's talking about. But basically, it is the story of Lillian Gilbreth and her husband, and they together started a company called Gilbreth Inc., Gilbreth, and they started off studying how bricklayers work and how they had to stoop so much and bend over, and they would get fatigued and they weren't working very quickly. And so the Gilbreths designed some special stations to help assist these bricklayers so that they could more easily build the walls that they were building out of brick, and do that without fatiguing, and obviously that improved efficiency. And then they went on to consult with other factories and companies on how they can be more efficient by improving their ergonomics. Lillian Gilbreth far outlived her husband by about 50 years, and she ended up being a professor. She had a PhD. She's one of the very first women in the United States to get a PhD. And Lillian Gilbreth is commonly called the mother of industrial engineering. Very fascinating lady. If you want to know a little bit more information about her, I'm happy to send you some links that I have. Anyway, so Caledonia and I had this wonderful discussion about the Gilbreths and how interesting they were. They also had 12 children, if you understand the Cheaper by the Dozen reference there. And the Gilbreths incorporated much of what they did professionally in terms of efficiency into their lives with their 12 kids, too. 2 of their children actually wrote these books. And many of their kids ended up going on to become scientists and engineers in their own right throughout the United States. So pretty interesting family, I have to say. However, I will tell you, should you go to Vancouver, definitely stop by. The bar is called Open Outcry, and it's in downtown Vancouver, and she can make you a hell of a drink. She made me a gin and tonic that I still dream about today. So speaking of drinks, yeah, well, we know what's going on. Who needs a drink right now? Me and my friends from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia do. You know, I want to say that when all this stuff is over, we especially us food service people, we want to go back to bars, just like my pals here in How I Met Your Mother. We're going to do that. Bars are just they're just essential to our industry, and we love them dearly. As a matter of fact, bit of trivia for you, Wisconsin has more bars per capita than any other state. They also have more bars in total than any other state, and that includes California. Bars are the heart of hospitality. That's why we're talking about them. Think about it. When pre-COVID and all this stuff, when you'd go out, we would always meet at the bars to maybe have a beverage before we sat down and had dinner, or to gather and go on and do something else. Your bartenders are actually some of the very best salespeople that work for a restaurant. Think about it. If you're early, let's sit down and have a drink. If that bartender is running on all cylinders and has a highly organized bar, and they're really great, and they're constantly got their eyes up looking around. They're never looking down. They've got their drinks memorized, and then they're able to have a chat with you about, oh, you're going to have this. Hey, as a matter of fact, this drink goes fantastic with the special that we have tonight. You should give it a try, etc. Let's take good care of our bartenders. So why is bar design so important? I think many of you know this intrinsically, but the bar is all about making profit. There's more profit poured at the bar than cooked in the kitchen. Now, if we've got some Canadians on the call as well, you see I've got some loonies and toonies in there as well. There's more profit poured at the bar than cooked in the kitchen. Now, restaurant food is great, because restaurant food means revenue with cash flow and time of people spent in restaurants to spend more money, more on drinks. And again, the drinks are the things that are profitable. Think about it. If we're sitting down and having dinner, and I'm having a steak and you're having a salmon, and that, do we order another round of food? We don't, but we will absolutely order more rounds of drinks. And those are the items that restaurants are going to make a lot more money on. And considering that when restaurants are reopening, they've got to focus on their profit. So we've got to definitely consider that. Something else that I find fascinating these days too is Instagram. Boy, oh boy, we got to pay attention to bar design that's going to be Instagrammable, new word for 2020. And these three bars that I took pictures of are, the one on the upper right is a place called the Real Sports Bar. It is adjacent to where the Toronto Maple Leafs play hockey. And as you can imagine, that bar top was designed to look like ice. What it is, in fact, is two long slabs of fused glass. You can accomplish this same look with, there are some translucent countertop materials out there. I think Avenite is one of the brands, and it's illuminated underneath. Absolutely beautiful. And you're going to see some more examples of illumination and interest using along the bar that I think is something to pay attention to. Again, not something that Perlick necessarily sells, but I just love paying attention to these cool design trends. The upper left there, that is a place called Mordecai Brown. It is the only place to get a good cocktail near Wrigley Field here in Chicago. Most of the bars around Wrigley Field are sports bars with a lot of dudes high-fiving, and I like a smart cocktail instead. And so I'd like to go to this bar, which is right across Clark Street. And cool things that I want to point out to you in that picture. Number one is the beautiful display of the glassware that they have. There's never enough storage space for glassware at a bar. They also have a very beautiful liquor display along the back as well. One thing I'll tell you is that we human beings are not too different from our fish ancestors in that we like things that are bright and shiny. If you're in a bar by yourself and you're not looking at the television, talking to the bartender, or looking at your phone, chances are you're staring at the liquor display. Give that a thought next time you're lucky enough to be sitting in a bar. In the lower left there, that's a place called Cabra. It's a rooftop bar here in Chicago. And I apologize, I'm going to say a lot of here in Chicago because I took a lot of these photos and this is where I live. But this is showing a trend that we're seeing a lot with design, and that is a lot of open air, brass tones, as well as a lot of greenery. Beautiful bar. And look at this. This place is called Duck Duck Goat. It's a lovely restaurant. And I've even seen people have their wedding photos taken in front of this bar. How happy does that make me? Okay, so let's talk about the overall design scheme first in a space and what makes people want to stay in a space, in a restaurant or in a bar. One thing that I love about this photo here, it's two things. One is that beautiful liquor display behind the bartender. We see this all the time, and it's a great way to show off your premium liquors. The other thing I love is that you see the illuminated top there. Remember, that looked a lot like the Real Sports Bar from Toronto. And thirdly, this is a screenshot from The Shining. I'm sure you remember that movie, and it was filmed a long time ago, and this scene even is to predate that. What is old is new again, with a lot of design features in restaurants and bars. Really cool. Okay, so other things that inspire people to stay inside a space. High ceilings, without a doubt. As a matter of fact, Tobin Ellis, who's helped Perlick design some really groovy equipment, he helped me write up this presentation, and he called it the cathedral effect. He very much has a designer's mind, and this is exactly what he told me, that high ceilings increase guest visit times and also allow for creative thinking. Low ceilings do the opposite of both. And you know, that's absolutely true. There's a couple of buildings that I have been in, and most recently I'm thinking about what LaGuardia Airport looked like before the renovation. If you guys have been there, if you remember the LaGuardia Airport from, maybe 5 years ago, the ceilings were so low. It almost felt like the place was pushing on you. It was just the most miserable place to be stuck if you were trying to get somewhere. But high ceilings have an airy effect. They feel better. Frankly, they feel healthier too. That's something else to think about as we move forward in time. Another key feature that people love to stay in a space is if the light makes them look good. And that's what you get in sort of that medium light. Any harsh, bright, fluorescent, even super bright LED, no one looks good in that. It's those warmer tones. There's actually a bar in the Mandalay Bay Hotel called Red Star, something like that. Anyway, you walk in and it's mostly a vodka bar. It's very Russian in its theme, and everyone looks spectacular because all the lighting is red. It's a really cool place. I wonder if they've got some funny stories about people walking out of there not looking as amazing as they did inside. Other key features that inspire people to stick around is the right decibel level. The sweet spot is about 80 decibels. That is a level that is convivial and joyful, but not oppressive. It doesn't mean anyone's shouting at each other, etc. That 80 decibels is what you'd experience at a really nice party, basically. I'm showing the Decibel X app there on the left. That's a free app that you can download on your phone. And that Decibel X app has actually helped me out. I had a local customer here that I found out was complaining about how loud our back bar refrigerator was. And I thought that was the strangest thing, because no one ever complains about the sound on those. We spend a lot of money at Perlick designing things that are extremely quiet. Anyway, so I go to the restaurant and talking to the bartender, and I explain who I am, and I walk back behind the bar, and I have got my Decibel X app out there. Well, right next to the back bar unit was an ice maker, an ice machine. Now, there is just about nothing that is more loud than an ice machine, and it was also blowing all kinds of hot air on the poor bartenders too. So a little tip from Corrinne: you might not want to put ice machines back behind the bar. They're really, really noisy. Other features that are great is definitely adequate seating. I love sitting at the bar, but of course I do. It's my job. I work for Perlick, but a lot of other people do as well. Again, it's a much more social place to sit in a restaurant, but you want to be sure to account for 24 inches per person. Otherwise, you're really on top of each other. I'm working on another presentation about design pre and post COVID. I'm actually presenting it to the folks at FCSI next week. And perhaps we will also make that a CFSP continuing education course as well. So be on the lookout for that. I'll talk a lot more about social distancing and how we accomplish that with design and things like that. Interestingly enough, though, this picture is from the Columbia Room in Washington, D.C. This place has won some James Beard Awards, as well as some Tales of the Cocktail Awards as the best cocktail bar in the country, etc. And it's an interesting place because it's owned by a bartender. The guy's name is J.P. Featherstone. And he did something that I would never suggest in a design here. And that is, look, there is nothing on that back bar unit. There's no liquor display, nothing to show off premium brands, etc. This was by design by him because he did not want customers ordering one of his cocktails that he carefully curated with to replace any of the liquors that are in it. He wanted them to experience it the way, because he took a long time to design these cocktails, and he wanted people to just enjoy them the way that he had intended them. So he put this beautiful mosaic up on top of the back bar instead. It's quite beautiful, but definitely not something I would suggest, but very interesting. And it's a very, very popular place. I've yet to go there. I did not take this picture, but it is absolutely spectacular. And we're obviously super proud that he decided to put all Perlick equipment in his bar. Some Finnish trends that are going on right now that are going to amp up the Instagrammability. And again, I'll talk more about this in a future webinar that hopefully I can do for you guys on design. Soft metallics are definitely the new neutrals. Hey, you guys, brass is back. I don't know if any of you remember the 80s with Bennigan's and all the brass that they had there with lots of ferns everywhere. It's not exactly back like that. It's a little bit of a softer finish, but it is definitely something to pay attention to. Lighter colors, softer edges, rounded finishes, things like that. To me, mid-century modern, that minimalist look, I think that's always something that I'm personally find attractive, and I think that people enjoy that in a space anyway. As I mentioned before, lighting that makes everybody look great, and greenery, 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 greenery. You're going to see that all over the place, particularly now as we are opening up restaurants going forward. A lot of restaurants, because we're getting towards summer, are going to be capitalizing on their patio space. Greenery can accomplish some social distancing for us as well without it feeling so cavernous. Okay, so how much space do you need for a bar? General kind of rule of thumb sort of thing is to plan for one bartender for every 50 people on average. Here's a couple examples of different shapes. Someone asked me before what a shotgun was. That's just a long straight bar with no turns on it. And it just gives you a good idea of what you're looking at for square footages. Definitely island bars are most typical of what we see in sports bars, bars that have a lot of televisions around them. Speaking of which, I actually showed you a picture earlier of what the new Buffalo Wild Wings design looks like. And here's a bit of trivia for you. The spec for Buffalo Wild Wings for the number of televisions that they have is, what do you think? It's 100 televisions for a new Buffalo Wild Wings. Pretty crazy. So as we know, organization is critical for every occupation. It's important for ours too. Here's a picture that I think I got from the OSHA website on how we should have our offices designed. Now, since most of us are working from a home office right now, I imagine it doesn't quite look like that. And as a matter of fact, I'm a stand-up desk kind of person. And I'm actually talking to you from my stand-up desk, which is in fact a Husky tool chest. But the Husky tool chest is great because it's magnetic. I can hang a lot of things on it, and it's got lots of little nooks and crannies and things like that. It's a great setup if you're thinking about a new home office. Try the Husky tool chest. I think it was $300 at Home Depot. Organization is critical if you're somebody that's doing a lot of neat things, with home improvement, or you're a carpenter or something like this. I showed this picture to my boyfriend Joe, and he went, "Oh, I need one of those." And I said, "You sure do." Maybe one day, we'll see. So obviously organization is critical to kitchens too. You guys are very familiar with this. And I fully admit that this picture was taken before anybody even fried an egg on that range right there. I understand that. The best bars are obviously going to be highly organized. Think about it. Bartenders, like chefs, are constantly creating something, but unlike chefs, they're also constantly cleaning up after people. And so we've got to have space for them to do all of that without moving around too much. A profitable bar program is absolutely critical to a restaurant's success more than ever. This is absolutely true. As I told you before, major focal point of hospitality, consider the bar first instead of last. Sadly, that happens to a lot of us where they're like, oh yeah, we got to put a bar in here. Well, geez, that's where this restaurant is gonna make or break them. Having adequate bar, having an adequate number of cocktail stations, adequate number of bartenders, absolutely critical if this place is going to succeed. You also want to think about ergonomics and organization. How is everything going to be placed in that space? We often talk about bars in terms of real estate, like it's very valuable real estate, because typically it's very confined, it's very restricted. So how best can we work with the small space that we have? And even though these folks are not working right now, when we're all back to work in places, excellent labor will still be difficult to find. And so let's make sure that our customers have the best bars available where the most terrific bartenders want to work. And know your local health codes. And we'll be talking more about health codes and what I think might be changing. Oh, and one other thing here. Do you see that delicious cocktail in the lower right? Called a dancing leprechaun. I have a couple of cocktails throughout this presentation that are going to be in the lower right-hand corner, and I will follow up with you and send you some recipes for these if you'd like. This one, as you can imagine, is made with Irish whiskey, and you'd probably do a little dance if you've had a few of these. This is something Tobin Ellis talks about all the time. I love it. Nobody's making money when bartenders are walking around and make one drink. That's absolutely true. It has happened to me where I've actually been to a really, really nice bar, and it's early, there weren't a whole lot of people in there, and ordered a cocktail, and the bartender went, okay, and then promptly walked away. I'm like, where are you going? And he said, oh, I've got to get this one ingredient that's over there. I'm like, why the heck would you put one ingredient for a cocktail that you're trying to promote on your menu 10 feet away from where the bartender is located? It absolutely makes no sense. The dance that you see behind the words there, that's actually the hustle for those of you who were around in the 70s. Zero-step bartending is really what we want the design goal to be. Maybe half a step, maybe a step and a half, but as few as possible makes a whole lot of sense. This picture is from the Libertine Social Bar in Mandalay Bay. It's fantastic. And the guy that runs this, who started it, his name is Tony Abu Ghanem. He was actually just nominated for a Tales of the Cocktail Award. He did this design, and I love what he did because he actually took apart some of our Tobin Ellis cocktail station elements and turned them and used them in a design that I hadn't even thought of. I don't know that any of us had thought of. Very, very clever. And you can see he takes advantage of every single square inch on this bar design. And by the way, if you get to Las Vegas, definitely go there and have a smart cocktail. Absolutely fantastic program there. And many of the bartenders there have been there for north of 10 years. So that says a lot. Okay. So getting to how we actually design the bar equipment, we always want to design them from left to right and from clean to dirty. That's really important, more important ever, considering we want to think a lot about sanitation going forward. Just having a little tea here. Okay, so that image on the right there, that came to me from Tobin Ellis. His company's called Bar Magic. And what those circles are showing are what the bartender's reach is without having to take a step in any direction. So look at that. So that's really where the main focus needs to be. They've got to have all of their ingredients right at their fingertips, if at all possible. So coming from the left and moving to the right, you've got clean glass or clean shaker pickup. You're going to have your mixers. To the left, your herbs, and any garnishes, things like that. The ice bin is always going to be right in front of the bartender. And then surrounding that will be the liquor. You've got a liquor speed rack and to the side, to the right of the ice bin, and you've got a speed rail in front of the bartender. Always put the soda gun on the left side of the ice chest. Well, now why do you think that is? Because most of us, apologies to any of you who are left-handed, but the majority of people, 90%, are right-handed. So your right hand, for most of us, is going to be your strong hand, your dominant hand. As a matter of fact, even Tobin Ellis is a left-handed person, but he always designs his bars for right-handed people because of this. So if you think about it, what you want to do is use your strong hand, your right hand, to pick up that very expensive bottle of liquor. Say it's a bottle of Chopin vodka, one of my favorites. And you're going to pour that with your strong hand and then use your weaker hand, your left hand, to manage things like your soda gun or any of your mixers. Things that were you to spill that would not be of a big financial consequence to the restaurant or bar. So soda gun always on the left side. I have heard cases where someone insisted it be on the right. Hey, bartenders can work with all kinds of crazy situations, but your best bartenders, the happiest bartenders, are always going to have it on their left, so that any bar that they work at is going to be absolutely the same. To the right of the liquor in the speed rack, that's just to the right of the. Actually, I'm going to show you here with my. This is your speed rack here that holds your liquor. And then just to the right of that is a dump sink with a strainer. And then you actually, on this drawing here, you've got a little dipper well here for mixology tools as well, where they stay clean. Always got to have that dump sink there. We're going to get into that a little bit more. And I know this next slide is kind of gross because it's showing you everything that a bartender needs to have around them. And let me tell you, this isn't even complete, because this doesn't show a POS station. It doesn't show check presenters. It doesn't show, other little things that could also be involved with a cocktail. Lots of tool storage, things like that. So this is just a small sampling of the things that all need to be within a step of where the bartender is located. Oh, and by the way, you are welcome to take screenshots as we're going along, but my intention is to follow up and send you not only those cocktail recipes that you'll see, but I'll also send you these critical dimensions. These are important for any bar that you're designing. And if I can impart on you if you learn nothing else from my presentation today, please take home that the critical dimension for everybody for ergonomic and lowering fatigue for a bartender is that middle one. The depth from the bartender's hips to the edge of the drink rail, 10 to 11 inches max. Now, what happens is if it's greater than that, as you're a bartender pouring in that position that you see right there where both of his elbows are up, at shoulder height, which is the OSHA neutral work position for pouring liquor as well as mixer into a cocktail. If you've got to shift those hands maybe 5 or 6 or 7 inches forward, you all of a sudden are aggravating this muscle that runs along our spines called the erector spinae. It goes up and down the entire length of our back. And not only because you're kind of pitching at your hips a little bit, and not only does it aggravate your low back, but it also irritates the heck out of your hamstrings. Maybe some of you have little kids, and if you've ever had to like reach into an odd position far forward to pick them up, you understand what I'm talking about. Now imagine having to do that 40 hours a week because somebody put a giant double speed rail in front of that ice chest. Now I know full well that my company does make double speed rails, but I'm here to tell you, it's really not the best thing to add for a bar design. If you need more liquor storage, definitely put it to the right on a liquor step or a speed rack or something like that. It makes a whole lot more sense in terms of optimal efficiency and profitability in the bar for sure. And again, I'll send you these dimensions as well in a handout so that you can reference this. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to show you the importance of dimensions because behind the bar, it's not just for one person. There's usually one or two people buzzing around behind the bartender at all times. So we've got to allow for optimal space for that. Also, we want to think about things like reach and where things are located in terms of how far off the floor they are, etc. I will send this to you also as a follow-up. To start the design of any bar, you've got to start with the cocktail station. It's basically the center of the bartender's universe. It's and Tobin gave me this because he's a Star Wars nut. Battle bridge, helm, flight deck, etc. But it is absolutely the center of their workspace. And so let's make these as efficient as possible. Oh, and by the way, there's a tequila sunrise, another delicious cocktail. Here's something that I'm also going to send to you as a follow-up. These are just little screenshots of what I got for you, but the one on the left is an Excel spreadsheet. It's actually an Excel workbook that you can actually manually add this information to, and it will do the math for you to help you figure out how many cocktail stations you need and how much ice is required for the facility. You can also just print it out. It's got another tab that has a printed version, but you can just print that out and take that with you if you're meeting with your customer in person and you don't want to necessarily do any calculations on the fly. I've also got on the right a Word document that is a bar design questionnaire. And what's nice about this is that I'm going to send this to you just like this. It is not a protected document in any form. Feel free to put your logo on that yourself. Maybe there's more questions that you'd like to ask your customers as well. Please go ahead and make this form your own. It's just a little handy dandy document that I've been kicking around for a while, and I will make it yours. Okay, so let's go through the cocktail station components. At the center of it all is going to be your ice chest. On the left there is one of our Tobin Ellis super ergonomic cocktail stations, and on the right is your more traditional bar equipment. So in the middle of all that, you've got your ice chest, right? That's where you've got all your good frozen stuff going on there. You've got to have a speed rail in front of that ice chest no matter what. And like I said, definitely try to avoid doing a double speed rail if at all possible. To the left of that, on the drawing to the upper left, is your jockey box or ice well for mixers. So things like your bottles of juices, maybe you've got a bottle of wine in there, you're doing some spritzers, things like that. You want to keep those cold. You want them right there. The soda gun, again, on the design on the right, is up to the left of the cocktail station. Make sure we make space for that. And then you've got your speed rail in front and your speed rack or your liquor step to the right of the ice chest. What is the most exciting part of a bar? You guys know what it is. Yeah, it's the drain board. Now, I realize I'm being a smarty pants here with this, but here's what I'll tell you. There is never, ever, ever enough storage space at any bar, anywhere. Any bartender you talk to, you say, hey, what's the biggest challenge? They're like, duh, there's not enough space for just anything. You know, here's a great idea though. Put in a drain board with a shelf underneath it or a cabinet. Why? Look what's underneath there. I mean, it looks a little bit messy, but it's all the things that bartenders need. I see some gloves. I see a packet of gloves. I see some backup paper for the POS station. There's check presenters. Heck, the bartender's phone. They probably just need a place to throw something like that. Think about all these things that there's never any planned space for it at bars. So let's definitely do the best we can and give them some space. If you don't plan for every single piece of real estate, let's call it, behind the bar, what happens is it becomes a repository for stuff and it's going to look super sloppy and messy. And as a customer sitting in, like, this is a very nice place, the last thing I want to see is a bunch of crap on the floor, rags and things like that. So we can keep things very neat and organized in bars. Definitely want to do that with drain boards and cabinets. Other thing you can do for drain boards is just use bar mats on top of them, like you see in this lower right-hand picture. That is from the Mountain Shadows Golf Resort in Arizona, beautiful place. And they just added bar mats everywhere. This place needs a lot of glassware. There's never enough storage space for glassware either. I'm sure I mentioned that before. Most glassware, though, is not stackable. It's not. So you got to allow for plenty of space for the bartenders to add and they're always going to be planning for their busiest rush. So they're going to have as much glassware out as possible. Now, at Perlick, we can add drain boards on top of refrigeration. That's a BBS 36C that as a standard comes with a drain board on top. You can also get an option for a cutting board too. That makes a whole lot of sense too as well if you can do it. Okay, also not super exciting, but really critical, really critical is your dump sinks. I will tell you that the vast majority of bar designs that I see where there's a problem, someone has forgotten about the dump sink. Remember, not only are bartenders creating drinks, but they're also cleaning up. They're also generally responsible for cleaning up everything on the bar. So having a space to throw out what remains of a cocktail, straws, ice, garnishes, makes a whole lot of sense. Now, one thing, if you don't even use Perlick equipment, please, just for my bartender friends' sake, always include a strainer for every single dump sink that you specify, because nothing is going to shut down a bar faster. And again, no profit if that happens. If the drain to the dump sink is clogged with a lemon or some straws or just some other extraneous stuff, you gotta always put in a strainer inside any dump sink that you specify. And really, dump sinks should not be shared. People can share hand sinks, but don't share a dump sink. It'll end up being a big mess. And you can see there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do a dump sink. The one at the bottom there, that's actually a blender station there. So you've got to see that little hole that connects that the electrical cord can go through. That's for a great place if they're doing, frozen cocktails, etc. So you've got a place to dump out that blender and rinse it out really quick before you make another margarita or whatever. Dump sinks are absolutely essential. Don't forget your dump sinks. Okay, also not so exciting, but let's talk about what's really essential these days. It's hand sinks. I believe that more hand sinks are going to be required going forward, and we may well be putting these in places we hadn't expected before. Now, I've been a germaphobe a good portion of my life. I don't think too many of you guys know this, but I actually have a degree in public health, and who knew that my 1 year of epidemiology would come in handy these days, but it does. But if there's one thing that was absolutely drilled into my skull back in the 80s, and that is always wash your damn hands. I think side splashes are going to always be required too. A lot of health departments already require them. My guess is we're only going to see more of these located everywhere with side splashes. I like the location of this one because it's right at the beginning of the bar. The one on the left there, I took that at the United Club at Logan Airport in Boston. Very typical of what we see with hand washings, with hand sinks. In front of that is a paper towel dispenser too. Make sure you know those local health codes for sure. Like I said before, hand sinks are shared, but dump sinks really should not be. All right, let's move on to my other favorite subject, again, being someone that has some public health experience, and that is garbage. I'm not Oscar the Grouch, but we've got a plan for trash can space. Now, I personally prefer always using a trash unit. That is a designated little piece of equipment that Slim Jim trash can slide into and slide out very easily. Here's why. If you just plan the space, like you see on the right-hand image, sometimes an equipment installer will miss that and will shove the next piece of equipment right next to that. There's a hand sink there. That has happened numerous times. And then what do? So if you've got that little piece of equipment there, that little trash unit, that is ideal because that's not going to get squished out of the installation. And remember, as I've said, I don't know, probably half a dozen times already, bartenders never have enough space to store all the things that they need. If you look at that center picture there, what's on top of that? That's a whole bunch of check presenters. And I don't know, it looks like maybe a paper menu and some other things there. They never have enough space. So they're going to do creative things like this to create some storage space for all the little things that they need. Now, what happens if you don't plan for trash? Oh, it's so sad. I took all of these photos. The one that makes me the most sad, though, is in the upper left. That's a really, really wonderful restaurant that is super wine-centric, and they make all these really interesting pizzas. And the guy that owns this place loves wine, and he was one of the first adopters of wine in kegs. I don't know if anybody's had wine out of a keg, but right now there are 500 labels at least that are currently being kegged, and they're kegged in stainless steel, which if you know wine, you know that light, vibration, and temperature variance are the three things that can really damage wine. By kegging wine, you're protecting it from those temperature variants as well as from light. And what I like too is that a keg of wine, which is usually that sixtel size that we see most craft beer kegged in, holds the equivalent of 26 bottles of wine. And on top of that, the wine will stay fresh for up to 90 days. Beer, on the other hand, beer's a live product. Beer will only stay fresh for about 30 days, maybe 45 if you push it, once the keg is tapped. But wine will stay fresh for up to 90 days. Anyway, this place has fantastic wines that they have on tap, and I always like to try them. And I'm really happy to say that they obviously use a Perlick wine direct draw for this. But anyway, can you imagine if you're working there as the bartender, you've got to take a glass and lean over the garbage to fill up my glass with some really terrific Pinot Noir. And not only that, you've probably got to do that 20% of your day, leaning over trash to do your job. I don't know about you. I would just hate it if I had to do something like that. So clearly they did not plan for the trash in this bar. It's just so sad. The lower left is from the Cubs spring training facility in Arizona. They planned for some trash, but obviously not enough. So they had to add some garbage cans there. Not terribly attractive if you're there. But another one that's really sad is this one on the lower right. I took that at a fancy schmancy outdoor pool bar at a nice resort. And look what I get to look at, hot garbage in the sun. It was probably 90 degrees that day I was there, and that's what customers have to look at. It's terrible. Put a trash unit in. I think I made my point, right? Okay. All right, cool. Let's talk about back bar refrigeration. Love my back bar refrigeration. Okay, so what do you think the ideal space is between the front bar and the back bar refrigeration? It's 36 to 40 inches. In most health departments that have some sort of a requirement for this, not all do, is the minimum is 36 inches. 40 is great too. That allows plenty of space for people to move behind each other, and it's not too much of a stretch and a lunge for the bartender to turn around and grab a bottle of beer, grab a bottle of wine out of that back bar refrigerator. Now, what happens if you have less than 36 inches? Because I know that happens. You might be working with a restaurant that's been around for a long time, and they have this beautiful vintage bar. And yeah, it's really tight because it was made maybe when people were a lot skinnier. There's some design options that we've got for you as well that you want to think about. Oh, and there's a cucumber basil gimlet. Let me tell you, that's a fantastic drink, and also good with gin. I'll send you that recipe too. All right, so what do you do if you've got a tight space? Think about using sliding doors or narrow doors. That definitely cuts down on the space. Sliding doors, obviously, those just slide open and closed. Real easy, doesn't take up any space. So it's real simple for a bar back or a busser assistant to buzz around back there and reload the back bar cabinets, and etc. The narrow doors are nice too because the swing on them is tighter. A standard door swing for a back bar unit, again, they're always going to be 24 inches deep, but the swing is 24 inches on a standard unit, but on a narrow door, it's 19 inches. Now, 5 inches doesn't mean doesn't sound like a whole lot of space, but it really is if you're kind of having to always do the hustle behind somebody to get over to your bartender station. Makes a whole lot of sense for employee comfort and speed and safety. All right, so let's do a little recap of everything that we've been talking about this morning. There's your cocktail station. Remember, you've got your ice in the middle. You've got your liquor bottle storage and your mixer storage there on the left. Got that dump sink. Don't forget the strainer. Now, what you're looking at here has a glass shaker rinser in the front. And those goofy things here, I'm going to use my cursor. I think you can see this. These goofy things here, those are actually foot pedals. Just so you're wondering what the heck that is. And then this is a variable depth dipper well for mixology tools, things like your julep strainers, your hawthorn strainers, your tall spoons, all that kind of groovy stuff. Oh, hooray, a trash can. My favorite thing is planned. And then next to that is your hand sink at the entrance of the bar. In this particular drawing, the back bar refrigeration is actually 42 inches from the front bar, and that's okay. You know, again, we want to, you know, the sweet spot's 36 to 40, 42 will be just fine as well. Other thing I always want to mention is don't ever mirror cocktail stations. You just want to duplicate them so they're exactly the same. That way, no matter which cocktail station the bartender is standing at, he or she knows where all of the ingredients are. They know exactly what they need to do. A lot of your architects and interior designers that you have perhaps worked with, they love to mirror things. Now, I can understand that because things that are symmetrical and balanced like that from a visual standpoint look beautiful. However, that's not going to work well if you're the actual person who is creating cocktails behind those, behind something that has been mirrored. I like to compare that to driving here in North America, where we've got the drivetrain on the right, and then we go over to England or Ireland and try to drive around. Well, it's the same components, right? It's a steering wheel and a brake and an accelerator. But when it's moved to the other side of the car, oh God, it's so difficult. I don't know about you, but I have to be super careful even just walking across the street in England. You also want to plan for your busiest rush. You can always shut down a cocktail station during the week, perhaps, when you're not so busy. But when you're running and gunning on Friday and Saturday nights, it's really great to have all those cocktail stations rolling. Talking about a lot of money here. Most bartenders can make like 100 drinks in an hour. So think about that in terms of profit. And if you're a restaurant and you're not making 80% or better profit on your bar program, you're definitely doing something wrong. Oh, and I mentioned here, be sure to adhere to the health department requirements for glass washing. I am hearing that some health departments are considering making the requirement a high temperature glass washer and not a 3-compartment sink. So be on the lookout for that as well as you're designing your bars, a high temperature glass washer. So this is how it looks when everything gets put together. Nice, right? And look what we started with. Oh my God. Hopefully we could do a little bit better than this and have some more information in there. But, you know, we can do it if we have to. I want to show you a couple of interesting bar designs here. This one has a VIP section. Excuse me. I have terrible allergies right now. There's a lot of pollen flying around outside when I was walking my dog earlier today. Anyway, the VIP section idea I really, really like, and I'm starting to see this in a lot of different scenarios. This design here I really like because you access, first of all, you can rent it out. So if me and my girlfriends want to have a fun night out, so you access it via this stairway right here. I hope you can see my cursor. And then it's actually an elevated section here. And what's nice too is that, so you get your own bartender up here, it'll make you some special cocktails. And then this over here is the entrance to the kitchen. So the chef can come up and have a special tasting menu for you and your friends. Doesn't that sound great? Oh, I miss going to restaurants and bars. Anyway, VIP section, totally cool idea. This is what it looks like from above. That's that same VIP section. Pretty neat place. And I think in the era of social distancing, maybe we'll see more interesting ideas come out with come out regarding things like VIP sections and slightly separated but together ideas. Oh, here's another very simple design. This is what we see in a lot of sports bars, like I mentioned before, rectilinear, very simple, but there's a lot of equipment packed into this space. Definitely island bars are something that we see loads of with sports bars because they're going to be hanging the televisions above them. It's pretty cool. Here's one that one of our sales engineers at Perlick that does bar design, he just had to show me, and he said, you better show this to anybody that is learning about bar design, because a lot of people want a curved bar. Trouble is bar equipment curved? Nope, it sure isn't. And frankly, they're super inefficient. If you've ever worked in a curved bar, I've been a bad bartender many years ago, but luckily I never had to work in a curved bar. I probably would have broken a bone or something, tripping over myself. But so you want a rectilinear bar, but look at the top is curved. What a great idea. And they've even already planned for an ADA section down here as well. Pretty cool. One thing I do want to mention to you is that my company is undergoing a huge redesign project in the next 2 years. I would say if you've got any suggestions or ideas for us, things that we can do better, please let your local Perlick rep know. We are all ears these days. Oh, and I'd love to show you this picture too. This is a friend of Tobin Ellis's, and it really shows, I think, all of the different things that bartenders are doing. Now, these are all creation tools. These aren't any cleanup tools in that, but bartenders are absolutely some of the most ambidextrous people I've ever seen. I love watching them work. I can't wait to go back to bars and watch a bartender make me a really crazy cocktail with 5 or 6 ingredients. They're constantly moving, the right hand and the left hand doing 2 different things. The only folks I've seen that are probably more ambidextrous than bartenders are musicians, especially, frankly, drummers. My boyfriend Joe is a drummer, and not only is his hands doing 2 different things, but especially if he's got the double kick drums too, he's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know how they accomplish it, but it's pretty amazing. But let's show the love for our bartenders with good design. As a follow-up, I'm going to send you all of these pieces here. I'll send you the critical dimension slides that you saw earlier. I'll send you some sample bar designs too. I will send you that bar design worksheet that's in Microsoft Excel, and the customer questionnaire, which is in Word, that again, you can take that and make it your own. I'll send you some recipes for the groovy cocktails that you saw, and definitely check us out on YouTube as well. And one last thing I do want to mention, because we are in a crazy time right now. This is a picture from Robert Perlick's first company. My company's been around since 1917. We have endured several wars, several stock market crashes, prohibition. Thank God that's not going on right now. The Depression, just countless other crises, and we will endure, and so will you. We're open right now for business. We've established some really good sanitary practices at our factory and keeping our employees safe and healthy. And we're there for you. We're still going to continue to innovate no matter what kind of crazy stuff is going on in this world. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions. Amy, is there any questions from the chat room?
Nope, no discussion on the chat room. I think they were all mesmerized by your presentation. But if anybody wants to unmute yourself, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask any questions or provide comments.
Here, I'll even turn my camera back on so you know I'm actually here talking to you. Hey, anything? All righty. Well, then, thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. And should you have any questions later, please don't hesitate to contact your local Perlick rep or your sales manager.
Hey, Corrinne, will you go ahead and put up your email slide?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. It's the next one here.
Yep. So you can send that to her or your rep and they can get it to their regional, and we'll make sure you get a certificate of completion if you'd like that for your CFSP point. And then also all that great information that Corrinne's going to follow up with and send you. I personally love those cocktail recipes, so look forward to that.
Yes, I made that basil cucumber gimlet not too long ago, so you can make your own basil simple syrup by just chopping up a whole bunch of basil, making a simple syrup, equal parts sugar and water, and it stays really nice in the fridge too. I've got some right now, so I think I have an idea for my Friday night. Well, anyway,
while you were talking about cocktails,
thank you everybody. Stay safe and have a wonderful weekend.
Corinne, wait a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so while we were waiting on that, a couple people did ask some questions. So somebody wants to know, what is the height of the trash can that can fit under our standard trash units?
Oh, how tall is that trash can? Gosh, I want to say it's 30 something inches. You know what? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I know that we make it for a standard Slim Jim, but I'm not sure the exact dimensions. But when we send the follow-out information, maybe we can do that.
Yeah. For sure. And it's the ones that are made by, Rubbermaid and Carlisle, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the standard Slim Jim. Yeah. And then also the lighting temp options for your bar coolers. I'm assuming that's just the lighting. We have a lot of temp options for bar coolers, and we can get into that. We actually have another webinar that's for all of our back bars. If you guys are interested, let your rep know. Maybe we can host one of these for that. But our lighting is going to be either a cool blue or what is it? It's not a white anymore, Corrinne. What's the name of that? It's more of a...
It is a bright white.
Okay.
And here's what I'll say though on that is you don't want to really mute that color in the back bar units, because it makes it difficult for the bartenders to see what the heck is in there. So it's a working light. It's not for ambiance. If you want to say, for example, you're working on a bar where they want everything red, right? Makes a lot of sense. Instead of changing the light bulb in the back bar unit, you can add a film to the glass if it's a glass door cabinet. That will look red from the outside, but as soon as the bartender opens it, it's white so that they can actually see what the heck is inside of it. So think about that, far less expensive option.
Great. I don't see any other questions, but make sure if you have another question or think of something, email your rep, email us. We're happy to hear from you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.